Well, hey there. If you love the gospel story and the kind of art that stirs your soul, you're one of us already. So why not make it official? Join the Rabbit Room membership. By becoming a member, you'll be a partner in everything we create. Books, articles, events, and even podcasts, just like the one you're listening to right now. Plus, you'll enjoy exclusive perks throughout the year, and we'll even send you our classic member mug as our way of saying thank you. Join us today, or learn more at rabbitroom.com/membership. Have you ever wondered what might happen if someone mashed up The Princess Bride with Calvin and Hobbes? Oh, wow! So have we. Doesn't everyone? Well, thankfully, comic artist Johnny Jimison has arrived to satisfy this very specific itch with his graphic novel series, The Dragon Lord Saga. In vivid color and high adventure, you can join Martin, the stable boy, and Marco, his well-intentioned brother, as they embark on an epic story full of bandits and dragons, danger and humor, brotherhood and villainy, and just one, sarcastic talking horse. The third volume of this graphic novel saga, Dragons and Desperados, is now available from Rabbit Room Press. Visit the Rabbit Room store or your favorite bookseller and discover the secrets of the Dragon Lord today.
The only thing durable enough is actually beauty and goodness and song. These things are so durable. Even though they look flimsy to us, they feel like almost an escapism, but they're really not. They really are a testimony and a way to bear witness to reality. And to not just to bear witness, but to actually participate in it. To actually engage with what is real.
Welcome to the Habit Podcast, conversations with writers about writing. I'm Jonathan Rogers, your host. This episode is brought to you by the Habit Writer Development Cohorts. I've taught a lot of writers over the last 3 decades, and here's a recurring theme. If you're a writer, it can be hard to believe that readers need what you can bring. But your voice, your point of view, your combination of interest and insight, those are exactly what the world needs from you. I put together the Habit Writer Development Cohorts, a 6-week writing intensive to help writers like you recover your voice, build sustainable habits, and produce work that sounds exactly like you. From May 19th through June 27th, you'll write alongside a small group of fellow writers with structure, coaching, and support every step of the way. Find out more and apply for a spot at thehabit.co/cohorts. Matthew Clark is my guest on this week's episode. Matthew is a singer-songwriter, a storyteller, and a free spirit. He drives around America in a van he calls Vandolph, taking his music and his stories and his wisdom to audiences across the country. For the last 6 years, he's been working on a project he calls the Well Trilogy. 3 albums of 11 songs, each accompanied by a collection of 11 essays inspired by those songs, written by friends of Matthew. The latest installment, Where the River Goes, comes out this week. In this episode, Matthew and I talk about aligning with reality, overcoming despair, and the love that outlives every kind of death. Matthew Clark, what a pleasure it is to have you back again on the Habit Podcast.
Well, good to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited about the new 3rd volume of the Well Trilogy. Tell me about it. Give us I know you've talked this in a previous episode, but give us the overview of the Well Trilogy and the music that goes with it.
Yeah.
Tell us about this whole project.
Yeah, it's been something I've been working on since 2019. And I had a bunch of songs, like just a pile of scraps of songs, and they seemed to kind of naturally want to gather in 3 conversations. And so I thought, well, maybe 3 albums. One conversation seemed to be about meeting Jesus, and what are the obstacles or the fears that get in the way of that. And then that ended up being kind of framed around the woman at the well. Here's this woman who has no imagination for how God could possibly meet her in a hopeful or good way.
Yeah.
She gets a big surprise, and she has all these obstacles to that meeting. She doesn't want to face God. But the face of God ends up being Jesus's face. It's a smiling face. The light of the face of God has been turned towards her. And so that album is called Only the Lover Sings. And as we'll talk about, it's framed also, and a lot around Joseph Pieper's stuff. Yeah, I even stole the title.
Yeah.
And then the middle album is about faith keeping. It's kind of centered around the Psalm 137. Here we are by the rivers of Babylon, and our slave drivers are just humiliating us, saying, "Why don't you sing those songs about that home you're never going to see again?" How do we decide to keep singing what is true and hold on to what is true? How do we keep this feast in the midst of misery and suffering? And then the last album, this one that's coming out now, is about the final return of that face we met by the well that seemed to disappear in the middle volume, and now has come back fully and completely unveiled at the last apocalypse. This great unveiling and revealing of the face of Jesus to the whole cosmos, and how everything is made new by that. And the sort of image for that is this river, Ezekiel's river, that begins as this little trickle from the becomes this massive thing that, and Ezekiel is told everything will live where the river goes, and the river is coming over Jesus's face, making all things new. But each album has a book that goes with it. I really miss liner notes. I thought it'd be fun to just have some gigantic liner notes.
Yeah, the most elaborate liner notes that have ever been composed.
Yeah, if you're going to do something, just overdo it.
Yeah. So each book is 11 essays plus an introductory and a sort of an intro and an outro from you.
That's right. So I asked some writers that I liked, and if they would pick a song from that album and not analyze it or critique the song. They didn't even have to mention the song if they didn't want to, but just enter into a conversation with that song and write a personal narrative essay. And those make up the chapters.
Yeah.
Intro and outro stuff.
So 32 different writers you recruited, 33 counting you.
I even recruited myself.
Wow.
I know. It was a moonshot.
It's just now occurring to me, is the reason you wrote one of those essays yourself is because I didn't get mine turned in?
Yeah, that's your fault.
Okay. Awesome. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Well, something you said a minute ago, maybe a good place for us to jump off. That is, now I can't remember how you phrased it, but you're talking about the new heavens and the new earth. And you didn't put it this way, but it's the way I like to talk about it, is in the new heavens and the new earth, the only thing that's left is that which is real.
Right. Yeah.
But before that point, we're always trying to sort out what's real, what's not real. We have so many different ways of dealing with reality or choosing not to deal with reality, being turned aside from reality, constantly trying to get ourselves reoriented to reality. But the day's coming when reality is all that will be left, which is another way of, you put it in terms of, all that's left is life. All the varieties of death will be gone.
Right. 1,000 species of death.
What'd you say?
So a phrase that kind of, how as you think, write, or process, certain things will condense down into a phrase, a memorable phrase, and 1,000 species of death was that for me. Thinking of there's obviously our literal death at the end of our life, and that's the last enemy, Paul says. But we also experience throughout our life all kinds of little deaths, all kinds of things that are not actually what God dreamt of for this world. They're intrusions and they're things. So all of that will be removed. And that's also that idea of this is part of why judgment is actually a positive thing, because judgment means that this fusion of the good and the bad and the light and the dark, all these things that we have a very hard time separating out or telling the difference, like you were just saying, they get confused, they get fused together. And so the wheat and the tares are growing in the same field, and the angels say, no, don't pull up, don't try to sort it out because you won't be able to.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have the blueprints for the original plan, and now this thing is in ruins and we can't rebuild it ourselves. But God is the only one who ever saw it before it began to fall apart. So he's the only one who can actually sort out that confused state that we live in. And that means that when he comes to judge, he will clarify all of that. He can
Yeah.
actually tell the difference, and he can tell what's a tear and what's not, and he's the only one who can cure our confusion.
Mm-hmm.
And the
Yeah.
opposite of confusion, I'm thinking of as holiness. It's purity. And so one day, all that is death that's mixed in with our lives will be removed completely. And so this is a cause for joy. Judgment is
Mm-hmm.
something you actually want in that
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. So you mentioned that we aren't able to rebuild the ruins because we don't have the blueprint.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what does that mean for a songwriter, a writer? Are you not trying to rebuild some ruins in your? I mean, your book to me reads like a rebuilding of something ruined. Am I misunderstanding that?
No, it doesn't mean that, well, we could talk about Pieper or and the idea of the knowability,
Mm.
that God is
Sure.
making himself known. And so we're not in a state where we have zero access to reality.
Mm-hmm.
We would be if God were not a self-disclosing God, not a communicating God. But he is a communicating God. And so that means um, that he is putting us back into contact with reality and with, that blueprint, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And even further than that, Jesus himself has come. The blueprint has come and become flesh and dwelt among us so that we could, like John writes in First John, this is the one we've seen and touched and heard. That's who we're talking about. And
Yeah.
so we have fellowship again with this God who gives us now access to what his original dream for the world was.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's also worth noting, as you note, that we were desired and loved into being.
Yeah.
The universe exists. The universe was thought,
Hmm.
and so as we think, we have access. You say God is a communicating God, and one of the ways He communicates Himself is just in the created order. That we can think about the world because it was thought. To
Hmm.
So I know since you're a Pieper reader, that's an idea that Pieper didn't invent, of course, that he's borrowing from Aquinas, and I don't know where Aquinas got it, but the idea that we have access to reality because reality is thought shaped, literally.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah. Go ahead.
that seems really relevant to what you're doing in these songs and these books that you're writing for this project.
Yeah, I liked listening to I forget what the number of the episode was, but that you suggested to me. Um, and it started with Taylor Linhart's that phrase, love himself dreamed you up.
Yeah.
And right, if that's true, then that there's a natural um, relatability of reality. Like, we have been made to know it.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
designed to be able to enter into it and know it. And that was always the quote predestination. The
Uh-huh.
destination was always for us to be with and to be like Jesus. And that destination got derailed in a lot of ways, but God has made it possible for that train to get back on the track,
Mm-hmm.
or for that pilgrim to find the lost trail again and wind up at the joy that was always meant to be set before us.
Yeah.
And that's actually normal. The
Yeah.
what God is returning us, what we've experienced to is a normalized abnormality.
Yeah.
What is normal is actually to be able to commune with God, to know Him.
Yeah. Well, I love the way you put it early in the introduction to this latest book. You and I and the whole cosmos have been desired and loved into being.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't know if I'm paraphrasing or quoting here, our Maker, the greatest of dreamers, is preparing a place for us just as we're being prepared for it.
Mm-hmm.
But boy, the idea that we are desired and loved into being, that's not a question. That's just something to marvel at.
It is. It's, and a lot of this trilogy is about being surprised.
Yeah.
A lot of it is about, wow, that's not what I thought was going on with the world. Or that's not what I thought God was like. Or
Yeah.
in, for me, in the first book, Only the Lover Sings, one of the big ideas is, and the reason it's framed around the woman at the well in John chapter 4, is that this woman's imagination for good is so depleted, it's so
Mm-hmm.
damaged. And so she can't imagine that God could meet her, or that these things that we've been talking about could be true about her or the world,
Mm-hmm.
um, because of her experience. And I think of the imagination as a sort of wall in your mind where you hang pictures, you hang images. And when you want to know what's possible for your life, you go and you look at that wall
Mm-hmm.
and you say, okay, a dog is approaching me. What's on my wall of images? Oh, I've got a lot of pictures of being bit by dogs.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a good idea for me to be around a dog. Or for this woman, you know, it's not a great idea to be around a man or God.
Yeah.
And so that's going to give her a sense of what's likely or possible. And then she goes to the well, and by the end of that conversation, um, what happens? This is an interesting thing. Something happens that we're not actually told. And in writing, you've taught this before, like show, don't tell. Or a lot of movie makers say, show us, don't tell us. And we're not told what she sees on the face of Jesus. We're only shown what happens because of what she saw.
Mm-hmm.
And judging by what happens, that she goes with all this joy and begins knocking on all the doors of the people she's been avoiding all this time because she's too embarrassed to be around them. Judging by that response, what do you think she saw on the face of Jesus? It couldn't have been disgust. It couldn't have been a frown, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is a huge surprise. And so to find out that God loves you and has come to bring the smile of God to you, to turn His face toward you with delight, to find out that you were loved into being, dreamt of, desired into reality, that's an unbelievable surprise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's where story lives, right? That unexpected, the thing that you couldn't have predicted, and then after it happens, it's obvious, and you don't know why you didn't guess it in the first place.
And it makes sense of everything that came before in a new way. You get
Yeah.
that sort of that backfilling of meaning.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Um, you say that the lover sings two songs simultaneously,
Mm.
and one is a song of lament, and the other is the song that says his love endures forever.
Mhm.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, I think that we're waiting, right? We're in this waiting period, um, and we're saying, "Oh God, how long is it going to take you to pull all this off? All this great stuff you've promised, like we believe it, and we're longing for it to come true at the same time. And we're in this circumstance where it doesn't look true or feel true most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
We're bombarded with all kinds of contradictory information and noise. And we're just trying to cling to this thing, and we see our own hearts, we see inside our own selves, and that's hard to face. And we're tired of being sinful. We're tired of being tired.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're lamenting and we're saying, "Oh Lord, you've said some really wonderful things." And so lament and love. What's that? Is it that Herbert poem? All my life I will both lament and love.
I don't know that poem.
Is it? It's just a line that is hung out in my brain, but I'm trying to place it. I think it's a Herbert poem. It might be I can't remember, but he talks about lament and love.
Mm.
I will lament and love my whole life, because I believe in you, and I'm also just carrying this longing,
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
But both are faithful. Like that's the sense in which lament is a faithful complaint.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you talk about the idea that a phrase that struck me from your introductory essay was the many deaths that love has outlasted.
Yeah.
Which, again, speaks to the comic nature of reality. That there are all these little deaths, and they're painful, and they're true, right? They're not false. I mean, it's just that there's something truer. That there's a love that outlasts all that death, all those losses, all those humiliations, and again, I think you're hitting it. You're getting at something very important for storytelling.
Mm.
That even that sentence, the many deaths that love has outlasted, that singing those two songs simultaneously, the lament and the song, His Love Endures Forever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's one of the beautiful witnesses of Scripture, and the way that God has supplied the story. Is that you've got all these terrible things happening, and you've got this God who is so reliable through the whole. That's the strand that goes through it, is the thread that goes through it is this sort of indestructible faithfulness. And you see all these reasons for it to fall apart, and for this thing to just be like, okay, there's no way this is going to recover. And then it does, and and um and then the most poignant one, literally, is the cross.
Uh-huh.
You see, okay, no, okay, this is it. There's no way you're coming back from this one.
Mm-hmm.
This is the place where, there are a lot of different ways you can think of the cross, and I'm not saying this is the one way to think of it, but something that I've been thinking about has been that for a long time I thought of the cross as a place where God is saying, "See, look what you made me do." Kind of like it's kind of like rubbing your nose in it, right?
Yeah.
But that's begun to change over the last few years working on these books. And now I'm thinking of the cross as God saying, this is how bad it really is, in the sense of someone who is identifying with with your suffering.
Mm.
He's saying, I understand what it's like to be you. It's this bad, isn't it? It really is. But you know what? Even in this place, I'm glad to be here. Even here, like even in this naked, humiliating, painful, miserable place, it can't get any worse. Like even here, I want to be with you. And somebody said that at the scene of the crucifixion, there is only one person who actually wants to be there.
Mm. Wow.
So it's another surprise,
Yeah. Yeah. Gladness. You just spoke of the cross in terms of gladness. He was glad to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Gladness is the great surprise.
Yeah.
And despair, let's talk about despair,
Mm-hmm.
resignation.
Resignation, yeah.
These are both. Is it fair to and this may not be fair at all, but we'll throw it out there. We'll talk about it.
Okay.
Are those positions of overconfidence, despair, and resignation? This,
Yeah.
I know how this is going to end, therefore I'm bracing myself for it. It's. I think it's unkind to call that overconfident, especially So I don't mean, but there's a sense of there in despair. If I'm in despair, I am confident that I know how this thing's going to end. My imagination has not allowed for
Mm-hmm.
a good ending here.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. Well, I love Tolkien's comment on this. Well, in Lord of the Rings, Gandalf says he talks about that we're really not allowed to despair because that means that we're assuming that we know all possible ends,
mhm,
all the ways that this could possibly turn out, and we've seen them all and we know them all, and therefore, and we know that they're all bad.
mhm,
So we've come to this conclusion. So I think that, and he says we don't know that. Even the very wise cannot see all ends, right?
mhm.
And
I
so
don't know if I don't know if Tolkien says this or this is somebody who was talking about Tolkien, but despair is not just a sin; it's a mistake.
that's right.
It is a mistaken sense of what the possibilities are.
That's right. So, but I think what happens is you do get to a place where you feel like you know what's possible, and you don't. There's always a room to be surprised by God because He
Mhm.
is doing surprising things. Um, and gosh, there are a lot of things I'm thinking of, but um, one of the phrases I use in the book, this last book, is the idea of a foregone conclusion.
Mhm.
This is a foregone conclusion. And the woman at the well, me in my life at different times, I have come to a place where I felt like it's a foregone conclusion that nothing good can happen,
Mhm.
which means I've come to a conclusion, even if it's a mistake or a false one. And the problem with that is that it's masquerading as a type of confidence or authority
Mhm. Or wisdom.
or wisdom. And so I can be really cynical or negative or sarcastic, and it can, because I've come to that foregone conclusion, I've ruled out hope or surprise, which on from the outside, you looking in on my life, that may look like authority. I can speak
Mhm.
of that, and it can come across as, wow, this guy really has wisdom or authority. He knows
He
that
knows how the world works.
we should all despair. We should all give up right now, you know. And to say like, but actually he's wrong. It's not that he actually knows all the possible ends and they're all bad. It's
Yeah.
that he just um, come to a conclusion about what's possible.
Yeah. And a kind of self-protection,
And so,
which again, it is actually pretty understandable for a lot of
sure.
people. I mean, the woman at the well, I completely understand why she felt resigned, possibly despairing.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Um,
A lot of room for compassion because it is in some ways very reasonable given, your experience, perhaps.
yeah.
Um, but there's always you have to leave room for variables you couldn't account for, you know.
Yeah. Well, to change the topic a little bit,
Mhm.
there's a line from one of your songs. Now I can't remember which song it is. I think it's the first
Title
one on the
track,
new record. That's
title track of the first album, I think. Only the
okay.
Lovers.
Oh, we're going back. That's right. This is from the first of the three albums. Tell me if I'm getting this right. You've never met a liar, only
Uh-huh.
the lie that they put forth. Did I
Right.
get that right?
Hmm.
What does that mean?
So the idea, I was taking this from Peeper too. he talks about that we are creatures that are made for beholding, to see and to be seen, and that God sees us and knows us, and we've been loved into being, like we talked about. And so our the right posture for us is to return that gaze, is to look back into the face that has sort of looked us into being. And but that's really scary because we have a damaged imagination. We have a hard time expecting anything good if we look in that face where we expect disgust and condemnation. And so we do all kinds of things to avoid making eye contact, to protect ourselves. And one of those things which means that we're not participating in reality. Insofar as I construct these facades that sort of extend out in front of me to protect me, and I don't tell the truth, and I don't face myself, it means I don't have a face. It means instead of a face, I have a facade, which is sort of a force field out in front of me. So, like, if you meet me, you don't meet me. You meet the facade. You meet the thing that isn't actually me. Because the thing that is actually me is so tender and vulnerable, and I'm afraid for anybody to see it. And so I protect that behind a false self, which means I can't be touched. It means I'm not actually available to the relationship. I'm not really participating in reality. So you've never met a liar. You've only met the lie that they put out in front of them. And there ain't no soul more lonely. Until you tell the truth, you can't be touched. And the idea of the lover, only the lover sings, only the lover gets the surprising new love song that they go knocking on all the doors in the neighborhood. Because only the one who takes that risk to let the facade down, to sort of drop the old clay jar by the well, and stop playing all these games and stop evading, and only that person has the opportunity to see and be surprised by the face of God. I keep running from reality because I'm so afraid of it, and then I'm just going to stay where I am. I'm going to stay stuck and untouchable and safe. It's kind of like that Lewis quote about you can protect yourself, but the only place where you're really safe from the pains of love is hell. And you can stay there, but there's a high cost. But the reward is so wonderful. It's hard to imagine.
Yeah. It reminds me of something you said in this book, that you can't grieve a false reality.
Yeah.
Until you face the griefs in your life, you can't grieve them. And the hard realities in our life, it's tempting to avoid them. And it's tempting to, because a false reality may be more manageable, we may incline toward them, but we can't really grieve them if we only put the force field out there.
Right. And the only thing that in my experience, and I write about this in the book and sing about it in the songs, is that nothing will give us the strength to be able to face those things that are so terrifying or painful unless we have someone with us, someone who's glad to be with us, who we know that we're sort of held. So the idea of turning toward the face of Jesus, that's where you find out, like, these two things happen at the same time. You find out, oh, I'm held in this gaze of belovedness. And so I've got the support I need to be able, in the face of Jesus, to be able to turn and face myself and face the things that I couldn't look at before because they were too scary. But because I know I'm loved and held in that beholding, I can look at that stuff, and together it can begin to change, begin to heal. And those painful things can be met by that same gaze. And again, that goes back to what's happening at the cross. I think that's some of what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Can we bring some of this back to specifically how this relates to the way you do creative work?
Sure.
Okay, so I mean, we can start with the idea that knowing that you are delighted in, that you were created out of delight. How does that, I mean, I like the way you say we must keep the feast of song going in the world.
Yeah.
And that seems relevant. That feels like a connection between the wisdom that you're talking about with regard to the way our identity,
Mm-hmm.
and the way we do creative work. So keeping the feast of song going in the world, because that's ultimately what's real and what's true, right? We are moving toward a wedding feast.
Yes.
That's the foregone conclusion. Nobody ever says, nobody ever uses the phrase foregone conclusion as a foregone conclusion. I'm going to be happy, I guess. Do people ever use a foregone conclusion in positive ways?
No, I think it's almost a negative, But no, that is part of the idea of the dream of God, is that God has always been dreaming of this particular beautiful destination,
Yeah.
The whole world is going to wind up at a wedding feast, and that's wonderful. That's what this was built for.
And Death and all his friends are not invited to the wedding feast.
No, they don't get to come. They would wreck it. But also because there's a George MacDonald quote I put at the end of the epilogue, I think. It says, "All that is not God is death."
Mm-hmm.
And so death doesn't get to come to the party of life. But yeah, we're keeping that feast in the meantime.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of part of the idea of this middle book is you learned this song, this beautiful, beautiful song of belovedness by the well in Samaria. What a big surprise. You didn't expect that. Okay, but it didn't magically fix everything.
Yeah.
It didn't magically make all of your suffering and grief go away. In fact, sometimes when you get the support you need, little griefs start coming out of the woodwork because you couldn't deal with them yet, but now you can. And so sometimes things actually get worse when you get the help and the love and the holding that you need. But in the second book, you got this album, you got this idea of being by the rivers of Babylon, and now I've got to choose between which tree am I going to abide in, the family tree of evil or the family tree of God. And here I am by this river. I'm being mocked. I'm an exile. I'm not where I want to be. And I'm really tempted to hang up my harp on the poplar and quit singing because I feel like an idiot singing. I feel stupid singing these songs. And then I look around me and the songs don't match anything in my experience. I'm not getting a lot of support from my, and so they almost give up in Psalm 137. They say, yeah, this is stupid. We're never going to see home again. That good foregone conclusion has been wiped out. And then they say, no, we can't do that. We've got to keep singing these songs. And part of the idea is also this, and this is kind of the epilogue to the middle book, talks about keeping a feast in the midst of your enemies. And that's that Psalm 23. He has set a table for me. Where? Like in the most comfortable, wonderful place? No, like right in the middle of enemy territory. And part of the idea is that we are being we're being invited to sit at this table and bear witness to reality.
Yeah.
A thing that is ultimately and absolutely true. And to do that in a context that contradicts it. To say something beautiful where in this thing where all the diction is contra, it is all against that, right?
Yeah.
And the hope is that somebody might say, somebody's imagination might be supplied with a new image of how life could be, and they might come and join us at the table. So we keep it for the sake of the world and for our own sake. Therefore, let us keep this feast. Let's maintain this feast. and it's a feast of song. And Pieper talks about you can't have a wedding feast without the arts. The arts are kind of the fundamentally festive element of reality and personhood. And so part of that is like song is very connected for him. Well, and the arts overall are very connected to like this is one of the ways we keep a feast in the world is that we make songs and we make paintings and we make food and we make dances and dresses and all of these things.
And those things are not just a relief from the fundamental sorrow of the world. They're a pointer to reality. That the sorrow is not ultimate.
Right.
It's real. The sorrow is here.
Mm-hmm.
The lament is here. And here's something that's truer than that.
Here's something that will outlast all of those deaths.
Yeah.
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 This thing will end up being the only thing strong enough to endure.
Yeah.
The only thing durable enough is actually beauty and goodness and song. These things are so durable. Even though they look flimsy to us, they feel like almost an escapism or but they're really not. They really are a testimony and a way to bear witness to reality and to not just to bear witness, but to actually participate in it, to actually engage with what is real.
Yeah. Oh man, that's so good, Matthew. You make me want to go dig in my garden and write a story.
You should. So that's part of my practice. Like I need to make this stuff.
Yeah.
So that I can. I hope that it bears witness to other people and becomes something in the world, like a little table that people can come sit at, a little habitat where they can come and meet Jesus and be surprised.
Yeah.
And it's also a thing that personally I need to do so that I don't, fly off into nowhere and give up.
Yeah. Okay, so you've been on this project since 2019. What are you going to do with yourself now?
Yeah, I think I probably should rest a little bit and not immediately pick up another project. But I've got a little Word document of about 10 or 15 ideas of things I want to work on.
Yeah.
But I want to tour. I want to travel around and promote it and get to go out and be in a room with real people and sing these songs and have conversations face to face. So I'm excited to get to do that this fall, I know for sure. Maybe even some this summer.
Is there an easy way for people to connect with you who want to host you?
Yeah, sure. My website is matthewclark.net and Instagram at matthewclarknet. People can message me there or email me from my website.
Right on. All right. Thank you, Matthew. It's been so good to spend some time with you.
I always enjoy getting to hang out and talk. Thanks.
The Habit Podcast is brought to you by The Rabbit Room, where art nourishes community and community nourishes art. You can support their work, including this podcast, by becoming a member. Visit rabbitroom.com/membership. Special thanks as well to Taylor Leonard for letting us use her song Diamonds as the theme music for the Habit Podcast. You can learn more about Taylor and follow her work at taylorleonard.com. The Habit membership is a library of resources for writers by me, Jonathan Rogers. More importantly, The Habit is a hub of community where like-minded writers gather to discuss their work and give each other a little more courage. Find out more at thehabit.co.
If you've enjoyed this podcast episode, consider joining the Rabbit Room membership. Your membership helps sustain this community, funding everything from publishing and podcasts and theater productions to events and programs that support artists who create with a Christ-centered vision. We'd love to have you on board. Learn more at rabbitroom.com/member.